I just always think of that whack-a-mole thing. I love a game of whack-a-mole. I am like that previously with my emotions. Yes, douche. And then they all come up and I'm like, douche, douche, douche. Yeah, I'm totally whack-a-mole with my emotions. Eventually they'll just be like, well, you're not listening to me. So now I'm going to hit the panic button and I will shut you down. I will shut you down. You will be a wreck by the time I'm finished dealing with you. They need to get the message across. And there is that kind of disarming of that panic button when you just hear out the negative emotion. It's just pure magic. And like you say, I've not heard anyone except you talk about this.
Hello, my beautiful friends. My name is Dr. Becc.
And I am Kristeen Barker, and this is Am I Doing It Wrong? A podcast for doctors by doctors. Dr. Becc is a mindset coach and medical doctor who specialises in liberating driven, professional women from the limitations of perfectionism, imposter syndrome, and people pleasing. She's basically the cheat code for getting out of your own way, showing up authentically, and living a life you're proud of.
And Kristeen is a medical educator and nephrologist who creates resources for doctors in training that I truly think are an unfair advantage. She makes complex topics super simple and takes the pain and uncertainty out of passing your medical exams. Kristeen and I connected a few years ago via our online platforms, and over the years we've discussed countless highs, lows, and in-betweens of doctor life. And in doing so, we've experienced firsthand the power of vulnerable conversations to show us where we're getting in our own way and underestimating our capacity.
So we want you to be part of the conversation and experience these same results. Every week on the pod, we'll be bringing you conversations which shine light in dark places, normalise the doctor journey, ease unnecessary suffering, and give you actionable steps to thrive in all facets of your life. So grab a cuppa and get cozy for this week's episode of Am I Doing It Wrong? The podcast for doctors by doctors. We should have got a cake. Why didn't we get a cake? Oh my goodness, we're so excited. I feel like everyone listening will think we're on mushrooms, but we are very excited because I've actually never taken mushrooms. I mean, who knows what would happen? But today is our 1 year poddy anniversary. So this is the 52nd episode and we are so excited. And we thought to celebrate, we would obviously just start by thanking each and every one of you for tuning in, for listening. We have been on such a journey with you and it's been so beautiful to connect with some of you behind the scenes who've reached out. And we're just really grateful that the podcast is resonating and it's helping and it's causing little ripple effects, and we just love you guys so much. So thank you so much for being here.
We love you guys so much, and you're actually just giving me flashbacks to all of the messages and the comments and just bumping into people and hearing who is listening. It's so wonderful to know that what we're talking about resonates, even on a really personal level, because what we talk about here is quite personal. It definitely was. I mean, it was so challenging at first to come onto the podcast together, to come on, like you guys, some of you guys probably know we actually record this live on YouTube. So there's not this space for us to like make everything we do and say perfect and planned. We wanted to, the whole point of the podcast was to make an offering on the internet for doctors that is more authentic. We know that we need so much more authenticity. And in particular, we try and have these conversations that you can't find anywhere else, that people aren't having anywhere else. And maybe you get to have them with your best friend or your best workmate if you're so lucky. But we know that they are so life-changing. And we wanted to bring these conversations that are so impactful to everyone. So we cannot thank you enough, particularly for taking the time to reach out to us and tell us. And I know we've got all 5-star reviews on iTunes, Apple iTunes podcast reviews. And if you do listen to the podcast, we would be so grateful if you would drop us a review, let us know what you think. That's supposed to make a big difference in terms of how much we're able to get the podcast out and how much it's recommended on the platform. And that is a big part of our mission, to create this big community and in doing that, create these safe spaces for everyone, and also ultimately normalize these kinds of conversations that are so helpful. So every single one of you, not only do you matter so much in yourselves, and we're so grateful that we've been able to connect, and also you matter so much in terms of how you affect everybody else in the world, in this space too. So Thank you, thank you, thank you so, so much.
Yeah, and it's also just super fun. That this is one of the most fun things I do. And it doesn't feel actually behind the scenes, just to be really honest, and we actually should make a podcast about this because it does apply to life in general. But one of the things that Beck and I did is we were so terrified to have a podcast, and we were also wondering like how are we going to fit this in amongst all the other things we do, and it wasn't something that looked really obvious to us. And so we came up with this little catchphrase, which was "Let it be easy." And now we've added in let it be fun. So now it's let it be easy, let it be fun. And that those are the rules we stick with. We don't get in our heads. We're not aiming for perfectionism. And I feel like it's just such a lovely I guess it's for everyone listening, like when you let things be easy and you let things be fun, they're more likely to happen. We could have really got in our own way as well. So we're grateful for how we've overcome some challenges to do the podcast, but now that we're doing it and we've been doing it for a year now, it doesn't feel hard anymore. It feels just part of breathing in life. And yeah, we love it. We love being here. So thank you for the fun as well.
Yeah, I'm really grateful for that lesson. I'm really grateful we were motivated enough to do this, such that we made it fit. And actually, Kristeen, I can't imagine doing it with anybody else but you. And you've definitely gotten me through times where it felt hard to either, like, particularly at the start, sometimes it felt really hard to talk about particular topics. But also just like working around the logistics of life and being able to do it with somebody like you. We share the same value set in terms of being able to, again, kind of not be so perfectionistic and rigid, but make things flow with other really important priorities in our lives. That we want you as doctors, all our doctor friends, to have the same ability to be flexible, to fit in what really matters most to you in life. And the podcast has become something that actually very much matters a lot to us in life, which has been a lovely surprise that's come about, as well as we've had so many beautiful connections and impact from it. So, oh, happy anniversary.
Oh, happy anniversary, and thank you for saying all those beautiful things. Obviously the feeling is mutual, but as you were talking there, I was having all these flashbacks to all these funny things that happened behind the scenes. Like, so for example, I was just thinking about how, we got our microphones and we were figuring out the audio, and then I was trying to edit myself and I sounded like Darth Vader. Like every time I was breathing, you could hear me breathing really loudly because I didn't know how to use a microphone, just stuff like that. But
I was listening back to an episode the other day and there was this like enormous, like, in the middle of the episode, I was like, what in the world is that? And I remembered that I was sitting here like talking about something deep and important, and then a bird flew in and hit the window in front of me. I just rolled with that with a bit of light improvising humor from Kristeen. That's the other thing about working with Kristeen. When you work with Kristeen, her humor just molds you back to the place that you want to be.
Oh, it's gotta be funny. But anyway, we're just lolling about this. It's actually we actually wanted to come on and talk about the things that we thought would be most impactful to you guys, but it's just as we're reminiscing, it's bringing up a lot of beautiful, beautiful memories, which is so lovely. So today we wanted to bring you guys back to some of our favorite things from the poddy and some of your favorite things. So the most listened to episode that we have is our episode on self-sabotage. Which number is that again, Beck?
Number 24. Doctors, do you self-sabotage? Apparently that's a big yes. They're going after your crown. You were talking about how you had the crown on this episode and you got some competitors, my friend.
Definitely. And I feel like that was one of the ones that people were sort of in my like text messaging me and things about that, because it was just something, obviously it was a truth that needed to be said. So I guess just to sum up that episode, we were talking about how we can get in our own way. So my example was when I was a doctor in training, I would not leave work on time. And I would tell myself that it was because I was doing such a good job and I was staying late and I was such a good doctor and I was caring for all the patients. And that somehow made me feel better about not leaving work on time. But when I look back now, the truth is that I was self-sabotaging because I had studying to do, or I should have been at the gym, or I should have been somewhere else. Wherever I was supposed to be, I was well and truly avoiding. And so that episode was really sort of nested in that realization, which I could only do from looking backwards. And I just think that a lot of people, a lot of doctors are in that situation where it is the perfect excuse, isn't it? It's the perfect excuse to not leave work on time because you're doing such a beautiful job, but then it really does take something from you. And when you have that realization that you're the reason you're not leaving on time, and you know you really could leave on time, and you're actually telling yourself a wee story, it can be so empowering to sort of change your life, basically. And you mentioned a lot of thought work in that episode as well. I was having the queen of self-sabotage moment, and you were sort of sorting me out with the thought work. Can you remind us what the key points were from that?
I mean, this is such a great example, and I think it resonates with so many people because this situation is just laced with all of that, the sense of obligation and doing what is praiseworthy. You know, thinking about the example of staying at work on later, the doctors are continuously praised for that. Some people are literally promoted and seen in a better light by our superiors who decide whether or not we get into training programs or whatnot. These praiseworthy activities, such as staying late, and then also obligation. There's this sense of a good doctor would not leave before every concern is put to rest, or that all of their workload is done and they don't hand over, and all these kinds of things. So it's just such a beautiful example of being able to pull up and work out what we're doing from our actual value set versus what we're doing from a sense of obligation or a sense of a desire to do what's praiseworthy, and basically having our idea of what is good being equated to what's praiseworthy. So it's such core work, particularly for the kind of people that I work with in my coaching practice. And it's so life-changing. And actually, the work that we did there wasn't actually largely talking about thoughts per se, but it was more the work on the emotional side. And while I do describe what I do as thought work at times, I'm trying to move away from it a little bit, because the truth is, some of the most powerful work, and probably at least 50% of the work that I do as a mindset coach, is emotional. And to be honest, I don't think I've ever done a coaching session that doesn't involve activating an emotion. Whether you like it or not, if you work with me, you're going to have to start feeling some emotions. And we talked about in this case how, you know, essentially, and I'm just going to add a little bit to this episode, but go back and listen to it because we've pieced apart the little details of it. But essentially what we were talking about is how our mind's currency is emotions. How we decide what we're going to do or not is based on what emotional return we expect, what rewards we associate with those choices. So if Kristeen saw this choice between staying late at work versus going home to study, what her mind is really doing to make this decision is she's saying which choice is associated with the greatest emotional reward. We can see that particularly somebody, for those of you guys who have that strong sense of obligation and that strong inclination towards doing what's praiseworthy or basing your self-worth around getting external validation, that staying at work, being the doctor who stays later, is going to be associated with high rewards. It's going to feel good. And it's definitely going to feel good for somebody who's got a lot of self-criticism, a lot of self-doubt, a lot of perfectionism, imposter syndrome, because going home to study, we talked with Kristeen on this episode about, the emotional cost of doing that work. And I have similar thoughts that I have to monitor and manage, which are like, oh my gosh, I should know this by now. I can't work out this slide. I'm so behind. All those thoughts. You look at those two scenarios and you ask, Becc, why am I self-sabotaging? And I'm like, guys, look at your mind. It will tell you very clearly why you're self-sabotaging. And I say that a bit cheekily because I just want to remind you guys that this is work that I have to very actively do for myself as well. It's not obvious to me in the moment. My decisions come about because of very deliberate mindfulness and metacognition, and also reflecting myself in these coaching situations. So yeah, it's such I think it resonated with so many people because of all those underlying mindsets with the obligation, the external validation, and then also the imposter syndrome, the perfectionism. You know, it was just perfect topic, Kristeen.
Actually, in general, I think my favorite I think it's because I get such a lot out of it. My favorite episodes are always the ones where I'm having some kind of crisis and you swoop in with your like thought wizard abilities and sort of sort it out. And it's people might not realize this, but I don't everything unfolds during the conversation we're having. Like I have these aha moments in this, like, oh, that's where I'm going wrong. Like in the middle of our conversation as it's happening on the pod. So I get so much out of it. And I think a really good example of that is also I think it was your favorite episode that you were going to mention. The episode 15 where you mentioned the boardroom of your sort of emotions in your mind. And can you unpack that one for us? Because I think that's another game changer when it comes to, I guess, normalizing the doctor journey, but also getting out of your own way and kind of just being able to climb out of some difficult situations. Yeah, can you tell us a bit about that one?
Yeah, I love this episode because again, I feel like it's something I don't feel like I've heard anybody offer this solution anywhere. And I think it create the problem we identify in this episode is core to a lot of the struggles we have and the places we get stuck. First, I just want to circle back and say, Kristeen, you're giving me too much credit. I feel like I show you what your mind is doing, and then the aha moments come from you piecing it together and being like, oh yes, actually there's a solution here. This is what I'm going to do here. So it's a beautiful synergy, but don't give me too much credit for what your brilliant brain is doing in these episodes. This episode 15, it's my favorite for the reasons I just mentioned, that I think it's a problem that we seldom identify. And if you can break this cycle with the solution from actually treating the underlying problem, then we get to release ourselves from things that can keep us stuck for years and keep us stuck in just loops and loops and loops and not knowing how to escape those loops. And the episode was really about so the boardroom analogy I use to help people appreciate that their mind isn't one cohesive, rational line of thinking, as we like to think. You know, I think we all like that identity of ourselves, that we're these economic, rational, very clever creatures, but we're not. And actually, when you learn to watch your mind a bit, you actually find that there's more than one sort of personality or voice in your mind. And it's when I say personality or voice, I don't actually mean that I literally hear these voices or picture these different characters, but I can see that my mind has different concerns and motivations. There's different lines of thinking, different lines of desires and fears, wanting to avoid things and seeing opportunities. And some of those lines of thinking are worry, concern, negativity, criticism. These lines of thinking that often, you know, especially when you do a little bit of mind management work, for people who do a little bit of therapy, they're kind of dabbling in learning to hear their mind. And sometimes we can do these takeaways of being like, okay, well, I just need to be positive. Sometimes, no, I would actually say a lot of the time, being positive is a really helpful strategy. And this strategy was for when being positive doesn't work. And actually, when being positive doesn't work, and then we keep applying that strategy, it can actually have a very negative effect in that we can be ultimately breaking down our own sense of self-trust in this way that we continue to dismiss the concerns, the fears, the worries, the doubts of this part of our mind. So the example is, you know, say I had a part of my mind that was worried. Maybe I've got a shift in a new hospital coming up, and one part of me is worried that maybe I don't know enough to keep all my patients safe. And the logical part of me, even the overarching, the dominant version of my mind says, no, we've got this. We know what to do. And for the things that we don't know, we'll work it out. We're resourceful. So in any scenario, we can sort things out. But when that fails, when that line of thinking fails and this voice keeps coming up, often the next best step is, ironically, not to push that unuseful voice away or dismiss it, quiet it, but actually we want to turn towards that voice, get closer to that voice, get closer to that part of our mind that is worried, and completely hear it out. The idea is that, you know, I want you to personify these different parts of your mind as if they were members of a board that you'd selected, over your whole life experience. You've developed these parts of your mind based on your personal experience, your genetics, biology, evolutionarily over time. We've developed these parts of our brain. They're all sitting around the boardroom with different experiences and therefore different concerns. If you had a person who was worried and they persisted in that worry, they were continuing to tell you, I'm really worried that if you go to this shift, it's going to end badly for us as a company. To just dismiss that person usually makes that worry bigger. If that person, imagine as an actual human, how would you expect that human to behave? Who's got special knowledge, special enough knowledge to be on your boardroom about your life and you and your experiences and what could go wrong in the future. We would expect that worry to only grow and grow and grow. And so the boardroom analogy allows you to think about how everybody, every part of your mind is actually there to try to help you, although sometimes they're misguided and sometimes they don't make the decision that aligns with what the company mission is and what risks they're willing to take. But dismissing ourselves and invalidating ourselves in these worries and these concerns doesn't usually actually work to quiet that part of ourselves. It can actually ironically make it louder. And I think that recognition of how our mind works can really help us to break those cycles of having that worry just get bigger and louder and take up more brain space and to take up more energy and continue to activate your nervous system in the background.
Yeah. And we were talking about how eventually they'll just be like, well, you're not listening to me. So now I'm going to hit the panic button and I will shut you down. I will shut you down. You will be a wreck by the time I'm finished dealing with you. And like they need to get the message across. And there is that kind of disarming of that panic button when you just hear out the negative emotion. It's just pure magic. And like you say, I've not heard anyone except you talk about this. And as doctors, we are hitting that override button like it ain't no thing. Like we love hitting the override button. We're so good at it. We literally like thrive in self-neglect most of the time in our training. And so no matter what part of your life it is, you're so good at hitting the override button that I think this lesson that you need to, okay, maybe in the moment that you're in, the override button is like a good mechanism, but later, sometime, you've got to sit and hear out your own concerns. And yeah, they're there for a reason. And the other thing that you brought up in the episode was, being grateful for them. Oh, thank you. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. This is actually super handy intel. Oh, that's why I'm feeling like this. Thanks. Like sort of almost understanding that that is there to protect you. And then having that higher executive function to go, okay, well, now I've got all the information. I've heard everyone out. This is the decision we're making. But like you say, your nervous system is so at peace in the background. It's just such a life hack. Yeah, so episode 15. So good.
You actually had such an amazing win that you brought to Dare Darling the other day, which showed how impactful this ability to tend to your nervous system is. And if you keep that person on your board who's just trying to help, who's trying to protect you, as you say, worried, they're going to keep hitting the panic button in the background. They're going to try and be as loud as they can. They're going to keep that nervous system turning up and up and up. And the way that you now handle your nervous system is allowing that nervous system to turn the dial down instead of turning it up. And doctors, yeah, we can hit the override button. That's an option. But what we're offering here with this boardroom analogy is a way to do hard things without having that nervous system up high in the background. I know that you guys can handle it, but we're here to say there's another way as well.
I just always think of that whack-a-mole thing. I love a game of whack-a-mole, but is it called whack-a-mole in Australia? Is that an American thing? I don't know. But the little moles pop up and you whack them.
I get a great vision when you talk about it too. Yeah.
I am like that previously with my emotions. Yes, douche. And then they all come up and I'm like, douche, douche, douche. Yeah, I'm totally whack-a-mole with my emotions historically. But yeah, I think like that's so true. Yeah, what Beck's talking about is I recently had like a public speaking event and I was reflecting in Dear Darling on how like I've been in the program for 3 months now and it's surprising me how much this is happening subconsciously. It's not like something that I'm trying to do. Just by being in Dear Darling, I've had a public speaking event, and it was such a different experience from my previous public speaking events, where even though I do them and even though I want to do them, because it's just part of what I was put here on the planet to do, is this teaching gig, but like it does make my nervous system really activated. I've obviously had lots of experiences in early life that have continued to traumatize me, and I've got this public speaking kind of anxiety. And this time it was so different, because I was doing this work and putting this into practice, and it was actually helping. But the interesting thing that I think was something that I just would want to share with everyone is that it wasn't conscious, because I was going to Dare Darling and doing this every week and listening to other people being coached and all the things. It was coming from a like it almost felt accidental. My nervous system would start to, even have a feeling of impending doom, like that bad. And I would be like, oh, okay, hey, impending doom, sup? But I wouldn't be consciously doing it. It was just like I was managing to calm myself down without thinking about it. So it was weird, because I didn't expect that. I thought coaching was like in the moment we would have the coaching session, and that's where the benefit was. But there's this whole other side of it. So yeah, that was really fun. But yeah, I think that episode, if you haven't listened to that yet, definitely go and check that out when you get a chance to. And Becc goes into the boardroom in more detail, so you can sort of learn how to not hit the override button and sort of have a better time, I say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think honestly, the biggest win of not invalidating yourself anymore is the self-trust. And everybody's always like, how do I be more confident? And to me, self-trust is the answer. And sometimes self-trust, well, the truth is self-trust requires you to be able to look at those thoughts, those worries and things, and hold them with respect, and not have to hide them, and not have to be positive all the time. That's not what confidence looks like in my books. If that was my version of confidence, I would not be very confident, because there are constantly negative and difficult things coming up in my life. So, my beautiful friends, we are just thankful. We are so thankful that you've been here with us over this time. We're so thankful we've been able to connect and touch our lives and speak about something that brings a lot more humanity back into medicine. We hope it's created more kindness and compassion in the world. And we hope it's made you feel more trusting of yourself as well, more accepting of yourself, and recognizing how there really isn't anything wrong with you if you're having these experiences. They're commonly, widely shared experiences, and they also have these different options for really beautiful ways that you can respond to these situations in a way that, again, doesn't turn up the nervous system, doesn't invalidate you, but actually, by becoming more accepting and even expecting of these challenges in your life, things can ironically get a lot less challenging in that context.
Just have more agency, more choice, and more freedom ultimately. Yeah, beautiful. And thank you so much again, everyone who's listening. Happy anniversary, Poddy. And Poddy humans who listen to the Poddy. We love you.
Let us know if you have been here from the start. I need to know who you are.
Oh yes, the Poddy. What would we call them? The diehard Poddies? Are you a diehard Poddy? We want to know who you are.
All right, see you guys.
I've been waiting all my life for something. I've been down the darkest roads and I've